Welcome everybody to the Madison County Board of Commissioners Special Call Meeting, August 24th, 2021 at 4 p.m., 4:04 p.m. Everybody have a copy of today's agenda. We may have some up front. Start off with statements, remarks from citizens on tonight's agenda, or this afternoon's agenda. Hearing none, we'll go straight in to our meeting. Anybody have any questions? All right. Discuss the state physical funder grant application for American Rescue Plan Act funding. So, everybody has a copy of the map in front of them, and this was for a projected 10-point list to be able to assist the IDBA in getting their grant submitted. Everybody had a copy of potential proposals as far as money allocations on that. And as of right now, I don't know where we stand confirmed, but that's what we're here to do today. Hey, Brother Zach.
Hey, how y'all?
We're just now on item number 1. We're just now starting to discuss it. You didn't miss nothing.
Got held up on Madison Clark Road doing all that paving, looks good.
Glad you got held up because of pain. Mr. Chandler's here. If anybody has any questions around the table, he would be more than happy to answer them. I was cleared up on the colored lines wasn't size. I see the legends off here now. And the reason I had asked that the other day on the email was there was a couple black lines, but it wasn't in the legend. I don't know what the black line was.
Yeah, because obviously this was kind of put together quickly off an existing map, so obviously the dash lines, just for reference, are the proposed projects. The color coding on those proposed projects is not relevant to the sizing of the lines, but as the legend down there states. But again, they're kind of prioritized in order of what we feel like our biggest system needs and system vulnerabilities. So again, with the opportunity to apply for the other grants, certainly as we understand that application, if we have matching funds, from you guys, it certainly helps the matrix, so to speak, as they plug all that in to the application to be able to apply for the larger pool. So.
And the grant, how much, are we looking at?
It's a total of $10 million, as I understand it, right?
Okay. And so the matching is at what?
25%. What we're requesting would be 25%, so 2.5 from your, I guess they're the rescue plan funds, and then again we would apply for the 7.5 from the on the second round of funding. So.
All right. I just want to clarify that. That's what I'm.
So a total of 10.
So I know Derek's familiar with the grant process, and I think Terry is also, and Brian, you may be. Dennis, I'm not sure where you stand on understanding how the grant process works, but there's, and myself and Christina reading this, there's no requirement for matching of any grants. But with that being said, what you're doing is by contributing matching funds up to a certain percentage, you're buying your way in the grant process.
It become more attractive.
Exactly, because it's based off of a point system. You can apply for the grant with no matching funds, and they would award whatever they feel that you deserve based on your project that you submitted. Obviously, they would really like for you to match it dollar for dollar, but financially you can't do that. So at any point in time, there is no set amount that's really looked at. It's just all of where you want to buy yourself up the points came at. Obviously, need gains points. Just if you have an area that's underserved, or that gets looked at before maybe something in downtown Athens or Atlanta would get looked at because of the service area. And I think the map is going to be a really good selling point for us, because obviously we're only covering about 1/16 of the county in this map, so that's a huge plus for us.
Josh, there any particular reason y'all did not include the sewer issues up in whole areas
Yeah, and a lot of it was timing with the application being due, basically August 30th. Water lines are a lot easier to project and kind of plan because you've got right of ways, you're gonna run them on the highways. The sewer expansion, which will be an expansion of the collection system at our existing plant in Hull, that's gonna require, going out and requiring easements, because, sewer lines are gonna run based on topography, not based off of highway, so just the time frame doesn't allow for us to really, look at that with this particular project, so.
In these, and anybody can answer this question, in these funds, are we tied to a specific list? Once we make the application, does that lock us into a specific list, or once you get approval, is there flexibility to go back and say our priorities have changed, or this is a bigger need?
As I understand it, y'all may know more about the process than I do, but it's gotta be for infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure, so we're gonna put these plans out there, these are our wish list, again, it's gonna be dependent on funding, obviously you can't do them all
Right.
if we don't get substantial enough funding anyway, so, I would assume once we know the award amount, some of these priorities may shift around. Again, I'd say within the top 5, those are pretty well set, but, obviously if we got funding to go above and beyond that, 6 through 10 could probably be more fluid, but,
I guess where I was going with that question is if this works out, could you put that sewer system issue ahead of some of these other projects and not avoid your?
depends on the timeline of that award, and I don't know all those details, but, again, if we've got time to do more planning, certainly that would be a goal, because, obviously growing the sewer collection in that system helps the potential for putting things on the digest in terms of businesses and job creation there.
And as I understand it, Todd, I guess to clarify again too, is that we have a certain amount of funds that we're gonna get now, right? This year.
ARPA?
Through the ARPA, yes, we
that
have.
we're gonna get. And so that, some of that, we're hoping to use to cover some of these,
To be the matching.
to be the matching, correct?
Correct.
So what, I know we don't know the exact number, but what do we know we think is the number right now?
Okay, the number that, it's just my personal number, and I'm not a voting member of this board. My personal number, in doing the math, that we have 5.8 of ARP
Okay, yeah.
funds that was
Right.
awarded to us.
All right?
There's several factors that can be played in. First, let me try to help answer Terry's question. Terry, from the way I read this, and Derek may know this from Clark County's side of it, but once you're awarded that amount, as long as you stay within the parameters of water, sewer, broadband, whatever you wanna do with it, that money can be allocated. In other words, it's not set per road, per street, sort of like T-Splosh is. I'm sorry, it's like Splosh is. When you allocate that dollar to the roads, it has to go for roads. This is not like that. If we were to be awarded $10 million, and it only took 6 to complete this project, you could use the other 4 for sewer, if you chose to. So it's, when they turn this map in, they're not held to the map.
The other reason for my question on that is we're considering a comprehensive plan for the county, and we define what that, we finally get that done, define where the county is going, then that might change priorities. So I don't want us to be locked into necessary, if somebody's gonna give us money, do what you do.
Well, and the priorities on this list are based on trying to shore up the fragility of our system as it stands today. So, none of this, if you look at if you did all 10 of those projects, it's still building skeletons.
Sure.
We're not really into
Yeah.
developing high density areas yet. This is still that basic backbone that we need to do our big planning off of, so.
One of the other key things about this particular grant is this grant didn't open up till August 1st, and it closes on August 30th, which puts, unlike any other grant that I've ever seen, normally takes a year or 2 to plan, you got 30 days on this one. So this puts us in a unique situation.
And I think what we're asking for, out of the funds that you've already been awarded, your board has already been awarded for the county, is to invest in what the IDA is trying to do in infrastructure and commit a portion of those funds as the match so that we can go and apply for these funds. So, they could tell us no on all of it.
Sure.
So, basically what we're asking y'all to do is commit up to that amount, should we be awarded the grant, to allow us to pursue some of these projects.
then would it be safe to say, Josh, that if, for some reason,
Mhm.
we failed to secure the grant, we could take the 2.5, whatever that number finally lands at, we could take that and go in another direction with it then?
That would be at y'all's discretion, because obviously, you know, the request, as I understand it, is for matching funds for this grant. Now,
For a
again,
grant.
you know, should that happen, you'd probably see us back here saying, hey, can we invest that in, can we pick a project and still utilize it for that? Because, you know, any of these infrastructure projects that we talk about are immediate payback to the taxpayer in some regard. You know, if you run a water line by someone's house, you know, they're getting a reduction in their homeowner's insurance, you know, they're gonna feel that. You know, I know a lot of the projects that we talk about, there's kind of a long-term payback to any of the taxpayers here, so I hate to ever say tax money is free money, but, you know, this is federal funds that came down. It'd be great to see those invested in infrastructure here in our county to help move us a little closer to the goal line that we want to be at.
And Josh, as he explained to me and talked to me about, and then also some of the other board members is, you know, it's got redundancy, it's putting some redundancy in some of these systems, and so that would be helpful. And I think the one they got is the number one priority is down there at the
Tying on the feed mill.
feed
yeah.
mill, which that would be a very good project to complete, because
Easy, fast.
Easy,
least
fast,
expensive thing.
at least, and then also, since the feed mill, it is an industrial complex down there, and I think they have problems with their boiler. They've had to redo it because they have no way, if they run out of water on their well, they're out of luck, so.
Yeah, that, you know, that's an opportunity to provide support. You know, we all talk about attracting new business in, but, you know, certainly make Columbia Farms feel good to know that we're doing things to support existing industry as well.
Well,
And it's also and all this, from a fire department standpoint, completing any of this is a helpful thing.
I noticed on here, Josh, that it mentions that to connect to the city of Comer too, would it be safe to say that there's some conversation going on with our municipalities in the county that we,
Come here, feel like I'm talking from the back of
yeah.
I don't mean to
But
disrespect
we're making
others.
an effort to consolidate the water system to,
Well, again, you know,
I appreciate that it's a cash cow for the municipalities, but at the end of the day, looking at the bigger picture, it would behoove all of us to look at providing a quote-unquote county-wide system, which would include absorbing some of these things that are out there, if they were in agreement to do that.
that's right. You certainly can't do that without connectivity. You know, I know Todd asked about Colbert, for instance. Well, you know, Colbert already has connectivity on 2, maybe 3 sides already. You know, there's a valve there already, so that's the reason there's nothing on our list that really specifically addresses Colbert. Comer already has a connection on Highway 72 and Old Highway 72. When they
Where it
ran the new
turns
water
on.
line in, basically, they've already bored under the new state route. They've got a connection there already.
So it would actually loop.
It would be a redundant connection.
Redundant, loop, feed from both ways.
From Comer, correct.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, you know, you don't have to talk to the city councils and the mayors very much to find out that there was a lot of animosity in the past between the industrial authority and the cities, and a lack of willingness to work together. So one way to overcome that, you know, as you look at these cities, and I'll use Iowa as an example, you know, Iowa's got a great well off Furnace Creek Road, you know, so as we look at trying to massage that relationship, you know, the opportunity for them to, at least in the short term, sell us water is an incentive for them to tie on. Also, again, Iowa, for instance, doesn't have any redundancy. You know, they've got I think it's a 100,000 gallon tank. They only get credit for half of that with ISO. You know, when they have to do tank maintenance, you know, they're dependent on their wells for that period of time. So, you know, that's step one in building those relationships. But, you know, some of those cities, again, already have connections, but others don't. You know, Carlton right now is still on the island by itself.
The actual question about Culver was, I knew we were tied to Culver. It was sparked knowing the water problems that Culver area has, not on the county side, but on the private side,
Okay.
potentially relieving that situation and us just taking that over altogether, because we all know that that's a bad deal.
We'd be happy to discuss with any
Sure.
municipality.
I just wanna make sure
taking
Ty
over
was
the water
already
system.
there.
You know,
Yeah.
go back a little bit of your history, when Danville was having issues with the sewer plant, they said, well, let's give the IDA the sewer system. We said, well, fine, let's buy the water too. That discussion ended immediately.
Yeah.
So, it's not gonna be a simple negotiation, obviously, that's how a lot of these cities, stay afloat, so to speak, no pun intended. But yeah, I mean, certainly, a countywide water provider would be an ideal circumstance down the road, but now is that 10 years away, is it 50 years away? We don't know.
Have you guys, and I talked to Frank briefly about this, have y'all ever done a survey? And I know that there's no typical in this, but just as a rule of thumb, how much per mile it costs for
To run a
8 or 10 inch, yeah.
I'm sure Frank has those numbers. I don't know that off the top of my head. The material prices, doing what they've done in the last 6 months, that number's gonna be certainly different today, I think, than it will be, 6 months from now. Some of that's gotta calm back down. But, I know there's some baselines there. I don't know off the top of my
Okay,
head, though.
that's fine, I was just curious.
With that being said, though, we supply all materials. So really all you're looking at, on that particular question was what do we pay per mile for labor?
Okay.
Because we furnish all the materials.
And, the existing contract we're doing now for, the Highway 106 expansion, that was actually a change order from our contract on Highway 72, so that rate has actually been locked in for about 3 years now, so, even that rate would be lower than the market standard today, so we're fortunate, with the GFA situation that we had there to be able to continue that contract at the same rate.
Now, I had heard, I noticed that the Mize extension, the dead end up there that we have, it's number 5 on the list.
Right.
And I thought that I had heard at one time that there was some water quality issues up there because it is a dead end.
There are, and the connection that is, obviously, there's a shorter connection between the Mize area down to that blue East Commerce Road. We actually have an application in waiting now, the CDBG.
That was the contract we discussed
That's
and
right.
approved him.
That's right, so that covers that connection. That's the reason that last extension, over to, from the Pokey area over, would be lower on the list, assuming we, again, are awarded.
We're
the
able to
CFD.
do that
That's
first.
right.
Okay.
And again, if that doesn't happen, to me, that would shift priority from the Sanford community up to that as priority 2. I still think the well and the redundancy to Columbia Farms is priority 1 regardless of
Yes,
these
yes.
others, but, again, awaiting the outcome of that grant award would be dependent on some of this as well.
One question that I have, and it's the only question I really have on this, is what do we have currently invested in what we have in the county in the grant? What note are we underneath right now? What dollar amount of a note?
Indebtedness or
Indebtedness.
value of what's in there?
No, indebtedness.
Probably in the neighborhood of 12 million.
Okay, so that'll be a huge asset to be able to get
That's right, and
almost 50% of that.
Since I've been on that day, I'm sad as it is, I'm the longest tenured member there. We've had a lot of turnover. But, so the GRP project coming from Elberton to Hollywood was the first project I was involved in. And at the time, we had about $8 million in debt for the system that we had. Of course, that was about a $4 million project, again, done through a GFA loan. But if you look at the payback to the county for that project versus some of the others we've done in the past, that one made financial sense if you looked at it individually. So, again, that's a wonderful opportunity to utilize some of the money that's already sitting in pockets, so to speak, to allow us to grow our system without adding more debt to it. You can't
That's the
grow a
reason
system
I
in
asked
debt.
that question.
That's
It
right.
was for that reason, because
And the line that we're doing around 106 now, for those that don't know, $1 million of that's being paid from the GRP escrow money that we secured up front with that deal. So we're, now that's been released to the county. Part of that's we're doing it through GFA, but once that note's closed, we'll apply those funds directly to that balance.
all right, go ahead.
Josh, you talk about locking it in, that I'll say the general public, for those that are kind of have an overview for it, the 5.8 from the American Rescue Plan, that allows us to do what we want to do. But the state physical recovery funds, there's 2 buckets of money, and for anybody that just want to make sure that anybody's listening, there's 2 buckets of money. One is water sewer and one is fiber. And I just wanna be, while I agree with the notion that, you know, we need to look at the sewer, I just wanna be careful that the expectations that we put in the application, you know, what I don't wanna do is put in the application trying to sell a water expansion program and we get a grant and then we turn it around. So I just, whenever the documentation goes in, I would just, you know, maybe prioritize it, give us the flexibility if it's possible. But I also know that $10 million ain't going far at all. And that's why I guess would be a little skeptical on trying to be too flexible for the sewer component.
That's right.
I
Well,
mean, we can set a need for the water.
It is very similar to the SPOS referendums, that, you know, you want them as generally specific as you can have.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
The biggest unknown is the next pot of money and when it's coming. So I'm really not fretting too much on this particular one because we know that there's another one coming. It may or may not have matching funds, could be like ARP.
You know, for us, it's just an opportunity, you know.
Sure.
The county's already been awarded this money, your organization's already been awarded this money. Let's use it as leverage to help
Yep.
the IDA
Yeah.
pursue another avenue of funding, so.
So
And the other thing, I mean, again, for general public or those that don't know about the state, funds, and I'm not sure about ARPA, but, we have to have them committed by December of 24. So by the time you do planning, if you need to get any easements, permitting, all the stuff, and then they have to be expended by 2026? And so, and I say that, not saying it's not a feasible project, it's just $10 million also don't sound like much, but for the IDA, that's a good start on a good project without being overwhelming. I mean, is that, okay.
That timeline works for the project. So. And again, you know, the beauty of a lot of this is it's running on county right of way, so you're not getting DOT permitting and inspections involved either, so it is one of those burdens.
So Brian, going back to your question a minute ago, when you asked me how the allocations look, I'm gonna tell y'all a couple of things that we have going on. One was brought to our attention last Monday. It don't have anything to do, I mean, y'all can sit down if you like, I'll take you a break. One was brought to our attention last Monday, and it was through the Carl Vinson Institute, and it was a calculator, formula 4.1. Everybody has a copy of that here. It's in the black and white documents. And in this document, Kathy's here, she ran the numbers. This document is showing if you didn't have a growth rate of X amount of 4.1 over the period of years it requests, that you were allowed to reimburse your general fund from the ARP because they're saying that technically you didn't grow at the rate you were supposed to. Am I correct in stating that? Okay. So as with that being said, our calculation numbers come back to 1.557, 633.78. And that would be, that money is, with that calculation come excluding the CARES Act money that they had received in 2020. So if you take that 1.5 and you put it back in your general fund as requested or stated through the Carl Vinson Institute and through the federal government, the federal treasury, or Department of Treasury, that would lower your amount from 5.8 to 4.3. Right out of the gate. A little less, give or take $50,000. One thing about the ARP funds that we're not aware of yet is our final rule, meaning how the disbursement goes. We know I know you gotta go, I get it, I'll take care of it, buddy, thank you so much. We know for a fact with ARP, water, sewer, and broadband is wide open. In other words, they did not give you definitions and are not going to give you definitions to how that money can be spent. We know it's eligible for matching funds. But everything else tied to the ARP funds, we will have to wait until potentially October before that final rule is confirmed, which puts us out of the window of this August 30th. So I know several of us have kicked around the idea of contributing to the senior center or ag center. With that being said, we're not gonna know if we can do that until that final rule comes down. Anybody have any questions about that?
Well, I got one question. So we put that money in the general fund.
Yes,
What restrictions do we have on how we use it?
you don't.
Okay, so we could use that for senior center or,
Exactly.
okay.
The 1.5.
Or we could use it for anything?
You can use it for completely anything you choose to use it for, once it's reverted to the general fund. So, along with the building across the street, the BOE expansion that we done, the remodel, the courtroom expansion, all of that verbally has been told that it can be reimbursed through ARP funds. The only part of that I don't know is the final purchase price, because of the way the lease agreement was written. We didn't pay for it up front. Anything that was spent after March 1st, meaning potentially the last two lease payments of $81,200, could be reimbursed also back to the county's general fund.
Lease for what?
The
Purchase
The
it.
board, the old funeral home across the street, when they purchased it, they done a lease agreement for $81,000 a year. Potentially, we can spend the ARP funds to pay off that building, because it is a expansion of an election office and a court system which falls under the COVID guidelines. So, with that being said, we know that there's still future money that has to be spent on the building. It can be spent out of this. So this is just rough numbers that I ran. You're somewhere around $325,000 into that building, between the remodel and paying it off, paying that debt off right now, which is coming out of the general fund right now. We could reimburse that $325,000 back to the general fund.
So then we'd be finished with that.
Yes. And I allowed, $60,000 for the remodel of the court system on the other side of the building, which could be paid for out of the ARP fund, instead of the general fund taxpayer money. So this is all taxpayer money.
That's
Don't get me
in
wrong.
that 325 or addition to?
I'm sorry. I put 160,000 for the remodel project total, both sides of the building, and 165 was your lease payments.
Okay.
So it's all included.
So everything is in that 325.
Yes, sir. Now, one thing that's also unforeseen, and it is, we're being told that the salaries for EMS sheriff, a lot like the CARES Act was, that could potentially be reimbursed after March 1st. Anything we spend after March 1st for EMS or sheriff, until the president ends the pandemic, can be reimbursed through ARP funds.
I thought that was just for premium payments to
No.
essential workers.
Now, I asked that question, I thought it was also, and they said until he declares the pandemic is over, for March 1st or whenever he declares that, premium had a cutoff,
Yeah.
a predetermined cutoff. This does not. But we can go back and check it, but I haven't run those numbers at all yet.
Okay.
So I don't know what we actually have invested from March 1st till today in our EMS and sheriff's salary, but it is a potential reimbursement. So, in my mind, Brian, to try to get back to your initial question, I had 1.0 for the ag center out of the ARP funds, contingent upon can it be used. I had 1.5 for senior center, contingent upon could it be used.
That senior center, rec, or combined, right?
Yes, senior center / rec, 1.5.
Yeah.
Coming from the top of the board down, if we deduct the 325 for the BOE building over there from 5.8 and do the 1.5 reimbursement based off of this piece of paper here, back to the general fund, that leaves you 3.9. 3.9, if you take off one for ag and 1.5 for senior/rec, leaves you 1.5 for IDBA. And that is your total money.
Well,
At any point, y'all can do what you want to with it, I'm just saying that's the numbers that I ran.
yeah, but now, you're coming off that 4.3, so you're taking off the 1.5 million that we're putting in the general fund, right?
Yeah, that makes it 4.3.
Yeah, so,
But then you take 325 off for your BOE building over there, it brings you down to roughly 3.975.
but we could, I'm just saying now, that, we could do the senior center rec department out of the 1.5 put in the general fund, right?
You can, but
But,
if you do that, not saying that the sheriff's department won't step up and ask for some of that general fund money, not saying the EMS won't step up and ask for some of that general fund money, because it becomes general fund money then, and you're gonna have to be fair to all. So hypothetically,
now, what do you mean fair? So there are some restrictions.
no, we don't know the restrictions, and we won't know until after our August 30th deadline, that's the thing. So right now, because we have an August 30th deadline, we're only guessing what we might be able to spend it on this. That's what I'm
So-
saying, just be cautious on what you allow
Okay.
now.
So basically what we're saying is we're taking that and putting it over there as a fund, basically to cover unknowns, right?
Unknowns, yes, sir, which could potentially be the senior/rec center, had it fail in October when the final rule comes down. Then you have a backup plan. Have it not fail, and in October you find out you can use it for community development, senior center/rec, then you're covered, and you still have 1.5 that could potentially be used for the next grants matching funds coming down the road. You create a cushion of matching funds.
Okay, so, all right, so looking at using that money in that way. All right, so what about broadband then?
Okay.
Just,
Broadband, at this point, the county has nothing invested in the broadband because the two grants, and one we'll get to in just a second, which is number 3 item, through Kinetic, they're putting up the matching funds for that. They put up both sets they put up the NTIA matching funds of 2-point-something million, and on this state physical funder, they put up the 2-point-something million out of their pocket. County is not on the hook for any of those matching funds.
so out of that 4.3 we're looking, then right now, we wouldn't need to commit any money for matching funds,
Not for broadband.
not for broadband.
No, not as of today, no, sir. The reason I'm trying to leave that 1.5 separate is because if the next grant comes down the hill, we know the availability is coming, if it passes one more, what is it? Mike, it's still gotta pass the Senate, or did it pass the Senate and ain't passed the House?
I don't know about
Yeah,
that. I don't keep up
it's so
with this law.
convoluted, I don't know neither.
I think it's all been passed, they're just trying to figure out what to do with it.
Okay, so what it does is it'll leave us, if the senior center gets turned down in the state money, you still have 1.5 that can be negotiated. If it gets approved, you have 1.5 in your general fund now that can be used for matching funds for the next set of grant. In other words, you're not putting all your eggs in the very first grant basket, and then you're out of matching money. You're sort of retaining half. But again, those are just my numbers, gentlemen. Y'all, please feel free to take it from here.
I guess I'm gonna ask my fellow commissioner over here, who I think maybe has some knowledge of this, but, yes. You know who it is, don't
What are
you?
you talking about?
Not to throw you under the bus or anything.
No, you're the engineer in this group. So, if the request is for 2.5 for this grant, if we lower that to a smaller number, how bad do we hurt our chances of getting the $10 million grant? Do you have any opinion on that, or?
I mean, there's,
When is that grant award supposed to be announced?
I don't have that time.
September, I think.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it's,
no.
Late
Know
September.
something pretty
it's not
quick.
long yet.
No, November.
that's the NTIA.
Okay.
We won't know NTIA until November.
It's coming from every direction. It's a mess. It's hard to keep up with, I promise.
To answer your question, it is on a points rating, so 0, and nobody has provided some sort of matrix to say, if you put $0 in, you get 0 points, and if you match it, dollar for dollar, you get X number of points. All I can say is probably in my historical knowledge from doing some of these things in the past, that 25% has always been a good rule of thumb.
That was the reason it was selected.
I think so, and some of the conversations that I've had, and again, some historical past efforts, I would be hesitant, honestly, I'd probably be hesitant to drop anything below 20%, so, there's probably, maybe the board, if the colleagues had a concern one way or the other, but, that's, again, that was kind of I think the 25% would probably give us a good chance of reaping, the ask that we are submitting, or the application that we talked about, the couple $100 million that are out there to reach into that bucket. I forget exactly how much is in the water and sewer bucket. But you're gonna have everybody from, neighboring Clark County, everybody's gonna be asking for something, so sooner or later, the applications, the people that reserve or review those applications, if you can imagine, most rural places like ourselves, there's a need, you're not gonna be able to deny that the need is there. And so when you start looking at, okay, if you check, everybody can check the box of the need, what else is left? And I think getting to a point where they can distribute as much money as possible on the awards, I think they're probably gonna look fairly heavy at the match. And, anything over 25%, I'm sure, again, gets more points, but at the end of the day, I would just say politically speaking, there's probably some criticism there when people say, we're only giving money to people who've got money, you're not really helping the poor rural community. And so I think that's, again, that's why my brain at least kind of settles on that 25%. So, and I think Angus, again, I asked for this list from IDA to kind of give us an idea where we're going. While I do think, water, sewer, and broadband, all of it's good, I think the current needs that we have, and the water is, again, our needs are way more than the application that we're asking for, but I think this gets us in a good spot if we get it, to put a dent in some immediate needs, provide those redundancies, provide some fire protection in areas, and start building up. And when I use the terminology, and I've used it in the past, a countywide water system, that's not my vision to say every piece of property has a water meter. No, that's not the intent. It's just to be able to support our, city nodes, our economic based nodes, and push water around the county in the need. I drove by when the Colbert hardware store was on fire. I was going on vacation that Saturday morning. Sunday morning, I forget which one it was, but I rode by when it was on fire, and that still, no pun intended, but that burns in my mind. Not too long after we came, on board, came on the board, I was getting phone calls that, we didn't have any water and Colbert City School was out. So, called Frank, and you know, we got down there and got some valves cut on and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff that kind of just sticks with me right now. I mean, I know we need other stuff long-term, but that's why I feel that we ought to support the IDA ask and, you know, basically with the 2.5, understand the infusion of some of it in the general fund, we get, you know, a chance to do that, but from the application standpoint, you know, I guess my mind is if, you know, other members of the board would acquiesce to that, we agree to that number, or if there's a different number that, you know, someone wants to put on the table, that we offer that, the application is due, you know, next week. So that's why the special call meeting was to try to identify that, get them the information that they need to say, okay, we're committed to that, they can rely on that. And then, you know, some of these numbers that were thrown out today, I know some of it's been circulated, you know, in our general conversation, but I also kind of would like to see it on a spreadsheet or, you know, be able to, when I say massage it, really be able to look at it holistically and not just, you know, jot down a few notes.
And I agree 100% with that, and that's, keep in mind, 25% can be 25% of whatever number we pick. 10 million was just a round number that was thrown out of the IDA, hey, we'd like to try to go after 10 million.
Well, 10 million is a cap on the threshold, there is some logic to that. From my understanding is anything over $10 million
Correct.
creates what I'll call the next level of bureaucracy. If you're doing a project, and when I say project, I mean 4 or 5 different projects that are $10 million apiece, it's the bucket of money that will come out of the application. So that's, my understanding is the project. So if you put in anything over the 10 million, creates that next layer of bureaucracy, which creates, or when I say that is, requires additional federal oversight, certain regulations, state regulations, special
Engineering.
studies, you know, Dave's Bacon Act. I mean, there's probably a whole host of things that go with more of what we would consider a federal project. Then at the $10 million, which I understand is gonna be kind of treated, there's still some reporting requirements that they'll have to apply. But it's my understanding that anything at that 10 million or less level will be treated more, generally speaking, as a local project, something we would do with our own cash. So I think that's the threshold where we felt, or I say we, you know, my conversation with Josh and Frank was, I think that's what they felt is appropriate for manageable without too much more layer of cost and increase, you know, just because of the regulation. Is that a fair assessment, Josh?
That's right.
Okay.
And if I could, I'll speak or not, you know, like I mentioned before, the IDA certainly carries a lot of debt for the infrastructure that's in the ground in the county. But we don't reap the reward of the digest growth that the Board of Commissioners do, that the Board of Education does, you know, and I'll use GRP as an example. You know, we get 1 mil, that's a small sliver of any growth, but yet we carry all the debt and the financial burden for that growth. So again, to me, this is a great opportunity for the BOC to really, you know, partner with the IDA and give us an opportunity to do things with a little better financial footing than let's just go out and borrow the money.
Yeah.
Does the IDA have any monies in reserve now, Josh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How much? Ballpark.
Probably 800,000. That's including SPOS. That's including SPOS.
Yeah, yeah.
Derek was exactly correct. The 10 million is definitely where we don't wanna go over. We don't go to 10 million in $1 because it does create much more problems. What I was referring to though was 25% of 8 million can be the same as, they don't have to necessarily go to 20%.
So if
You're
they're
lessening your,
If their award is 8
Award.
million instead of 10,
that's right. It could still be, I mean, you could call it 50% if you want to. If you put in 2 and get 4, you got 50% match. But obviously, we want the most we can possibly get, within reason.
let me go back and let me take a step back in the comfort zone for me. Do we know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that 5.8 million is coming?
We've got 2.9 in the bank now,
The rest of it to be when?
in 12 months. That's the other kicker to this. Only half of this is what's in the bank. The other half comes 12 months after May, wasn't it May? We
Yeah.
received it in May, so it's exactly 12 months to that day we're supposed to get the other 2.9. So we only got half to work with. Not saying we couldn't come up and loan ourselves money had need be. The only, I get the cap of the 10 million. The problem I have is we didn't put any numbers on what we're actually planning on spending. We put a plan here, but we don't know if this is a $4 million plan, a $6 million plan, an $8 million plan, or a $20 million plan. So I know we're gonna try to get as much possibly done as we can. Just be cautious in throwing too much in there when we don't even know what this is gonna cost. Because I know you said you'd like to see a numbers broke down, but that's exactly what we don't got.
Your $10 million will not touch that list.
Won't touch that list.
No.
On the dotted line list?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. You asked for a wish list of our top 10 items. That's what you got. You know, you
Okay.
didn't say, what would you do with $10 million? You asked for a top 10 list.
Okay.
So you probably can get project one done.
Oh, no.
Project one's about $600,000 at our last bid.
Okay.
Again, that was, when we looked at it, when we were doing the Highway 72 extension, and we didn't have the funds available to do it then.
So, what's your,
Double it now with the price of pot.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you double that, so it's a million.
If you could get that top 5 done,
That would be-
you've had a great
Great.
day.
But,
You've
yeah,
had a great
but I
day.
see you put together the top 10 and then
That's right.
you place it out there, then you do what you've got the money to do with.
That's right.
Based
I-
on
I asked for a top 10 list.
Yeah, that's, and I
Because,
understand.
number one, I knew that would probably take more money than we had, and B was, anything beyond that was probably, you know, just a longer term plan than an
Right.
immediate plan.
I understand. I understand
And for instance, you know, if you look at item 6 on that list, which is the Harrison connection, you know, that couldn't be done until the state finishes that bridge connection anyway.
that. Right.
You know, so there's other variables that come into play, even with prioritizing some of those items. But,
And that's one of the longest stretches too. and
That's right, that's right.
It's gonna be expensive, no matter when you do
You know, if you want a comparison, you know, the line we ran to Elberton was $4.2 million 2.5 years ago. That'd be a comparable length of extension up through there, so you could even half of it up on that one project
it. Right.
easily.
Yes.
Yeah, but now we're running PVC pipe instead of running duct line.
Well, in
which-
certain areas, it depends on where the topography allows for the pressure.
Yeah, but C900, whether it's running uphill or downhill, on that, I think, bottom line, y'all want 2.5 million. I mean,
That's our ask.
Commitment,
That's right.
Commitment of that.
pending with the grant.
And again, you know, whatever that number is what we're gonna put in our application.
Yeah.
But we just have to know from your body
Yeah.
what we need to include on our application that's due next week.
Obviously, they'll put in whatever we decide, or the board
That's right.
decides, and they're gonna go after the grant irregardless.
That's right.
Sure.
We just hope for the best for whatever we can possibly get, because honestly, $1 million is better than $0.
That's right. Yeah. We're just asking that y'all support us in this grant application, so.
Yeah. I'll give you all my breakdown. Anybody else throwing suggestions around?
Well, if you go with the 2.5 million there, you just lower the numbers on the others, you know, instead of lowering the numbers on the water, okay? And my way of thinking on this is that we're applying for a grant that if 2.5 is what we need to do to have our best chance to get it, I would think that we want to do that. And then we've got some other options for some of this other stuff in the future, the way I'm looking at
If you're successful, that's a 4-to-1 return.
it.
I'd sign up for that most of the day.
And so, to me, that's just doing an analysis of it and looking at it and then making a rational decision. That's what I look at. And, you know, this other, I wanna do that, you know, and put the money into the ag center and the senior center, rec department and all that, but I think we've got some options to do that. Because, you know, by being putting money in there, you know, and we don't know what's gonna happen. We may not can put all that in there, or whatever in those others. We may not get this grant,
That's right.
That's right.
and then we can back up and say, well, all right, we was gonna get 2.5, we got the grant, but now we need to really analyze it and come back and give 2, or whatever number it is, and do the best we can with what money we got. But I think as far as proceeding and trying to do what we're doing, like you said, Terry, that's what I think.
Would it be, to ask the question here, say we put the 2.5 in and the grant's for 8, are we still obligated for the entire 2.5, or can we use that money somewhere else?
25%.
Percentage-wise, if we don't get what we're looking for, can we reduce what we contribute to?
Once
No,
you,
once, so it's on
once
the
it's submitted,
table,
that's
once
what
it's
your,
there.
that's what your front money is right there. And on 10 million, you're gonna get awarded 7.5, because they're gonna say your first 2.5 is yours.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, if we don't get, if we put in 2.5, but we don't get the 8,
No, that's-
including the
He's saying-
2.5.
He's saying, what if you get 6 instead of 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is our matching a dollar figure, or is it a percentage?
Percentage, that's, maybe I'm not.
Well, it's both.
I mean, I understand you're asking a question, I don't know what, there's a specific, I don't know what the specific application says, but I'm just gonna make the assumption, again, they're gonna say, what are you contributing?
Yeah, okay.
And we could, I think, maybe word it as a, you know, a 25% up, or
25.
up to 25% at a maximum cap of $2.5 million, but, you know, really highlight that. I don't know.
That's the unknown on this. On the phone with Jennifer Ward, she said, in front of myself, Derek, Frank, and a couple other people there, Christina was there, and John Phillips, was 0 matching funds, you may get a grant. For how much, we don't know. 25% matching funds, you may get a grant for what we don't know. Dollar for dollar matching funds is probably your best route.
But still,
That's what she said, so that, you're not guaranteed anything.
that statement you just made, change the potential rate of return for us. So if we apply for a $10 million grant,
Thank you.
So you can word it any way you want to.
so,
Yeah, again, I've looked at the OPB, I've looked at the application, and I think we could spell out what our desires are and be clear on that. I don't,
if we apply for this grant, and let's say it's up to $10 million, whatever, let's say we're awarded a $10 million grant, then that award is the $10 million plus the 25% that we match, correct? Or is it the $10 million less than 25% match?
Less.
So that's only a potential return of 3 million.
yeah,
So,
I asked that, I did ask that.
I guess my question would be to you, if I can,
So
you
the
know.
grant would only be 7.5 million, assuming.
So the project, the way the state would look at it is, the project is 10 million, and you are contributing 25% of it.
And you have to spend your money first.
Josh?
I think whatever your group decides, you need to be comfortable that we're willing to invest this in infrastructure in our water and sewer system. To me, that's the mindset you need to have, regardless of whether the number is a fixed number or a percentage. You know, if you're willing to commit that, hey, our county needs the growth in our infrastructure of $2.5 million, that's what you need to be able to lay your head on your pillow at night. If you got hesitation about that and it's only 1 million, you know, that's how you need to approach it. And certainly we're asking, we want to apply for as much as we can. And if we feel like that 25% or the 2.5 million is how we came up with that, that's fine. But the question you really need to ask yourself, you know, in your mind, in your heart of hearts, do you feel like it's a good use of these funds to invest it in infrastructure in the county?
In the past, going back to Tom's statement, you know, using our money first, in the past, at least my experience, again, this is, especially with some GDOT stuff, is that if there's a matching grant, and let's say the invoice comes in as $100 and you're paying 20%, you don't pay the $100 and then wait to the end. You would divide that invoice into 80-20, and you kind of pay for it parallel as you go.
So you're saying that we could write this as 20% up to 2.5 million, right? Request.
I think if you did this on your motion here, that form motion you got in front of you, you can change it to motion to commit up to whatever amount, ID and BA as the primary grant applicant for 25% matching funds.
Okay, 25%.
There's certainly no doubt in my mind about it being a good investment. There's a couple of things that, and I, you know, we visit after the meeting if you have time. Actually, and it's been well over 6 months ago, probably 8 months ago, I've visited Frank and I said, please, give me a plan for what would be an ideal system. Because I'm thinking about system solution, like tying in cities, and I'm thinking about big picture solution. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed that, you know, this is a quick picture. And that's what I asked Frank for that 8 months ago. I'm getting more comfort in the fact that probably we have a couple of years to play with to figure out exactly what is, you know, as we, obviously FEMA, I mean, that's no brainer. That's number one. Then after that, we've had discussions about the sewer problem up there at Dogsboro. And so I feel like we have some flexibility, number one, to go back and take the time and really define where our priorities are, and then also to make sure that we're matching where we're going with what the comprehensive plan tells us to go to. So that gives me more comfort in making the commitment that we're leaving ourselves that flexibility to make sure we are in line with the plan that we need to be.
Yeah.
So my understanding clearly, committing 2.5 is gonna take all your matching funds for the next grant that comes along. It's gone. Am I correct with that? Because we all know through the media that there's another round coming, $4 trillion, $5 trillion. If it requires a matching fund for broadband, water, and sewer, because right now that's all they're preaching on from the federal level, we're not gonna have matching funds to do it with if you put it all on the first one.
Why?
Where are you gonna come up with the rest of the money?
We put part of it in the general fund, aren't
Put 1.5 in the general fund?
we? Yeah. I mean,
To me, they're two different issues.
that is totally different.
This doesn't lock anything in, this doesn't prevent us from doing anything down the
Anything
road.
in the future.
If you commit this money and you get awarded, it's fine if you commit it, don't get me wrong. If you commit it and you get awarded, you scratch the Ag Center. You
How are
scratch
we
it.
scratching?
Yeah,
Well, you got,
We
just use numbers,
we
just
have
use
we
numbers.
have just subtracted from the total that we have.
That's right. Subtract it from the total you have,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what's
We had-
left?
We hadn't eliminated anything. We
Let's
just-
just say on the Ag Center too, if we could keep you in front, so
That's gonna be a whole nother ball of wax.
that's another ball of wax is to figure out how you could use any of that 5.8 million for
Okay.
that.
So we don't even have any confidence we could do that, right?
Same thing for the rec department, we just didn't know at this
We
point.
won't know until sometime.
Well, the rec department's at least county-owned property. Yeah, but true, I mean, it's gotta fall into one of these categories. So yeah, that's true. It's gonna have to be justified under public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, probably that bucket, and.
What I'm saying is if you just remove all your names.
Property, so.
Remove all the titles as to how you're gonna distribute it and work strictly with numbers. What you got left, if you put 2.5 in, what do you got and where are you potentially gonna put it?
So out of the 5.8, if you take out 2.5, you got 3.3 to be determined.
That's right.
And you're taking
3.3.
And I'm fine with that.
25,000, yeah.
Well, this is where I'm looking at it right now, in my mind, is we have an opportunity to get some money, do it for the water system. We have this opportunity. It's gonna take 2.5, we think is our best option, or write it up as
Yeah.
2.5 or the 25% to get that money. So, you know, like that, the return on that's good, no matter what we get.
Agreed,
If we don't get anything, we tried.
agreed.
So then we got that money back, we'll do something else with it. That is to help the county. The thing about it is the other money, we still got 3.3 that we can deal with. Now, we don't even know what we can do with that, maybe. We got some ideas of what we wanna do with it, but we can decide that after that. Because we haven't really thrown out, done away with any options we got. It's the way I'm looking at it.
Right.
We still got all kind of options. All we've done is committed 2.5, and I think that's a good number to try to get 10. If we get it, we're all happy. If we don't, we still got the money.
But at the end of the day, what we've got is $2.9 million in the bank
Today.
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 Well,
I don't think there's any contingency on the other half of that, is
No.
there?
no. So
It's
we're really,
it's all ARPA money.
Yeah.
So the federal government allocated some directly to local governments. That's where our 5.8 is coming from. So that's the local fiscal recovery funds.
Yes.
Then the states all got state fiscal recovery funds. And the way the state of Georgia is choosing to do that is to allocate at least part of what they're getting to local, also to local governments through this grant process. So we're using our local ARPA money to match application for some state ARPA money.
so, and when would we get the other part of this? When is it?
A year from now.
Okay.
May.
May, we get it for May. All right, so the planning to do all this and get it ready to do, we're not gonna probably be spending that much before.
We're not gonna be ready to
No,
write those
you-
checks
you-
before
That's
next
right.
May.
So, that's, what's in the fund is irrelevant.
Yeah, you got until December 24 to commit it and December 26 to spend it.
Yeah.
So if you don't get some or all of the state grant stuff, then you still got until December 24 to commit it.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay. So the motion would be to commit
That's like that right there.
up
Is
to,
the public gonna be able to ask questions before y'all?
Yeah. We'll take any kind of input.
I just have a couple, kind of what Terry was going on. Y'all have a copy of this plan. Is the public gonna be able to see that? Cause the public's still waiting on some water maps that we've been asking for months, and, just to see where, essentially it's our tax dollars. Is this grant money? I mean, it's our money. I'd like to at least see what the
Yeah.
plan is gonna be.
I think that you could probably get this, you know, we're asking for more information ourselves. And that is not a knock on you, because y'all had to put this together real quick.
It's not a knock on anybody,
Yeah.
like, it kinda scares me, kind of a red flag that why is there a
Well-
timeline?
And,
When they're you know,
What is their timeline?
on the grant or the application?
The
state
state,
said that.
the state
Um,
released it, and they basically said that you got about 30 days to
30
send us an
days.
application.
But from what I understand, they usually don't do that,
No.
No.
so that's kind of a red flag to me, it's kind, what kind of strings are attached? But we won't know until,
this is coming from, this is all happening because of the Recovery Act that Biden
yeah.
did, okay? So that explains why all this is coming right now.
I know, I know.
You got that far?
Any strings, and I'll say the best way I understand. The state of Georgia doesn't do anything brand new. And I'm not saying in a bad way, whether it's state money, EPA money, there's always a federal procedure that they have to follow. And so I think what they're doing is, what I've heard is, it's just, here's a new pot of money, and we're gonna slip it into some of these existing programs.
Yeah.
So it's not that we can just run off and be hog wild with it, it's, okay, this money will be used for water lines, what other rules are usually typically in play with water lines? And whether it's via permitting, the EPA, Safe Drinking Water Act, there's all these other federal guidelines, that's the strings, but they're pretty well known. I mean, I can't quote you, I mean, it's federal reg, but generally speaking, that's the way it's been shared with us, is you're gonna have to follow the general rules that you normally follow.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, there's a whole list of new stuff. So at least that's the way I understand it, and I think that's how we're gonna move it forward.
And I saw Josh
Yeah,
do that, which is great, but I would put on there proposed
Yeah.
and subject to
Right.
Subject change.
And I
Subject
understand that,
to change,
it's a lot, I see it, and they're just kinda throwing money out there, but I don't, you know, the whole comprehensive plan, it is a plan that needs to be well thought out. The money we get needs to be just as much thought out, I think, so.
Well, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier. None of this that you see on that map is, in it, none of that infrastructure is targeted enough to develop growth in a certain area. You know, again, we're just trying to, the reason you don't have a lot of maps in our system, and Derek knows more about this than I'll share, but some of our previous engineers wouldn't release records to us. We're actually redrawing our system
Yeah.
right now. So when we're going out, getting GPS coordinates on everything, remapping it. That map was developed last week after we
Yeah.
heard of the August 1st,
Deadline.
application, which is due August 31st. So we developed that for the county. We'll be happy to get you whatever maps you want. There's not a lot in the ground, just to be honest with you. It's a lot of miles, but it doesn't cover a lot of the county
Yeah.
because
We just
Madison
need
County's
to
huge.
know, everything keeps
Yeah.
reverting back to water, water, water.
Right, so again,
We need to know where the water is.
our plan for this is to bolster the system that we do have, because there's not a lot of redundancy to the service areas that we provide. And again, just develop a little more of the backbone. But again, if we got all the $10 million or the 7.5 and you're 2.5, still not gonna touch that map. So,
But I will say, as far as your 30-day thing, what I've seen, and I'm sure Derek's seen the same thing, cause he read it, for the first time ever, the state cut out a lot of the fat, a lot of the jumping through hoops that they normally require, a lot of the engineering that takes possibly 2 years to meet these requirements. They literally put it in a 9-question, I think it's 9 questions format. Answer these 9 questions and make your submitment, which honestly, I love it for the fact of, because it's really, really hard to acquire a grant. Even if it's a $1 million grant, it could take you 2 or 3 years to get that with a grant writer from Harvard. This definitely helped. I wish the window would have been larger, trust me. But qualifications for it, I really like.
yeah, most of these applications, you would actually have to have engineered drawings done and ready to submit with the application. And again, just saying, we'd like to run a water line down this road and highlighting it on the map, so.
The flip side is, that doesn't tell you much about what criteria the state's gonna use
That's
to measure the
That's
applications.
the,
the
that's
other
where I'm
side.
getting at,
That's
is,
the other side.
My lack of comfort in this whole picture is probably very similar to yours. Sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And this is money that somebody just dreamed up and is printing anyway. So that's really the price of everything's gonna be double, because it's useless money.
I don't
Or
disagree
it's
with some of
worthless
that.
money. What has happened, at the federal level picture, these dollars were allocated, and somebody got disappointed because they're not moving. We've got every how many $1 trillion allocated, and only point something of it is moving. So they were given a deadline, y'all make this money move, and this is what's happened.
And they're gonna spend it somewhere,
Yeah.
so would we like to see them spend it here?
Yeah, we might
So
want to try to get some.
I am very, very, very uncomfortable with the whole picture of what's going on. But that in a nutshell is what is occurred. You got phony money being printed, it's not being given out fast enough, y'all do this, y'all give some of it away.
And don't get me wrong, I'm 100% on the comp plan, though, Terry. I mean, we need to get that document, you know, it's gonna take a while to get there. It's gonna, you know, this grant is, or this application won't wait on us to do that. But I guess what gives me some comfort level on doing that is, somebody's getting that money, that we think we know, you know, like I said, EPA, the standard rules will apply to this. It's not something new or foreign, or, you know, waiting to see what the final rule is gonna be. We know it's an eligible expense. And then, you know, going back to, you know, even past the comp plan to future planning and growth and, you know, fiscal recovery, if you would, for ourselves, you know, a couple of these projects, you know, tying into feed mill actually creates an additional water source. That's less, hopefully less product we have to buy from outside, which makes that a little bit more physically attractive to, for the IDA, you know. And then also, say, take for example, Isla, you know, to get up that way, you know, what happens if the well went off, you know, schools, I mean, I know Corona challenges the school system to as a whole, but just generally speaking from the water standpoint, you know, if we had a catastrophic failure up there, if there's a catastrophic failure, we got no way to help them.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I think by putting some of these pieces, again, it's not, again, my vision of a countywide water system is not having a meter at every driveway. It's it's getting to some nodal areas and being able to push water back and forth across the geographic area of the county to support each other. And I think that's, to me, that's what gives me some comfort level in trying to move forward with it.
Yeah, I guess what we've all got to accept is this is not a master plan.
Oh,
No.
This is nowhere near that. This is at best a realization where we have immediate needs that the IDA would like to address.
That's right.
But I would ask, and this goes with Terry's thing. Some months ago, Frank and I discussed, what's your vision? Tell me where you're going.
That's a scary question to ask, Frank.
I know, but when I'm told something,
Right.
and I'm asked questions, particularly down there where we at, because we tend to be a little bit backwards over there where I'm from. But when you tell somebody something you're told, you best man up at it.
Right.
And that's what I expect to see, Josh. And I appreciate, I don't have a problem with the $2.5 million. I think it would be well spent regardless of where we spend it in the county. But I would like a little bit more knowledge about where we're going with the system. And in fairness to the folks that sent us over here, I think it would behoove all of us if we could spend a little time, down the road to get that put together. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Well, this comprehensive plan process is gonna be the perfect time to do that.
To do that.
Great.
Well, that depends on whether they recognize where we're going or go back down to Highway 72 and tell us it's fixing to happen there again.
Yeah, well, if we do it right.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we are tasked with to make sure it gets done right, as far as getting the right folks in it, and input. And, I don't beat a dead horse, but, I'm pretty comfortable with the projects that outlined here as a sort of a fix something up. And I will say that in talking with, some people in the fire thing, it does help in that respect as far as public safety does in here, and the redundancy. And as you stated, some of these big fires where you gotta shuttle water, if we can get a few hydrants around, we ain't gonna be there to every house to have a hydrant. But if you get them closer together where you can fill up some trucks quick and get back,
That's right.
you got a much better chance of beating out a big fire. And look, we got places here in the county such as Transcon pipeline and stuff like that, which we hope never, ever we have an incident. But if we ever do, we're gonna need all the water we can get for a little while, just to get it contained so that somebody can get in there and fix the doggone thing, so.
Well, and to that point, I've been in the fire service for, 15 years myself, and there's fire hydrants all up and down East Commerce Road, and I've been on the fire truck at that hydrant,
Yeah.
it felt like you were pulling a draft on the county system,
Yeah.
and again,
Because there ain't enough water.
there's a water line through there, but there's not enough supply to that water line. So again, that's the part of this, again, Danny, you said it best, this is not a master plan by any stretch, We've got a lot of water lines running areas of the county, and I hate Monday morning quarterback. We shouldn't have picked that road to go down, so to speak. But again,
Should have been a different size, a lot of different.
that's right. So again, that plan is a way to bolster what's already there, and provide some redundancy and enhance services for the areas that do have water service already, and hopefully tie some of the cities together in a way that provides us with some more opportunity for water supply. Again, I mentioned a couple of the wells, the feed mill has a well that's our well, but we can't pump into our system from it because it's isolated. The city of Comer has surplus water, the city of Isla has surplus water. So there's a lot of opportunities there for growth, but, at the end of the day, we are just contracted to run your water system. So, I hate that a lot of times we look at this as the county and the IDA is doing this, there's documentation, that it's the county's water system, the IDA is just contracted to manage it. So again, if there's things that our board, our organization's not doing, y'all can replace me at any time you want to. and I'll vote for that person as well. But again, you know, y'all select the members of our board, so it's our duty to perform to your expectation. But again, we gotta start looking at this as, you know, that $2.5 million, it's the county's money.
That's right.
The water system that you're gonna spend it on is the county's water system, and that's the reason I made the point a moment ago. I don't want you to get caught up, well, we committed 2.5, but they only got 8, so we're only gonna give them 2. Well, you know, if you're not comfortable spending $2.5 million on the water system, I'd rather you didn't give us any. Because that's really what you need to be comfortable with, is recognize there's a need for infrastructure, and you're willing to put the money where that need is.
Well said.
And I don't, there's absolutely no hesitancy on my part, and I think you hit what's the key issue to me. We in this county, again, historical,
Right.
not casting stones, but we've been very fragmented. County's doing this thing, Board of Education doing that thing, IDA's running over here, and that's where we gotta get together. And what I don't want, and I don't think anybody here wants, we don't want to say, okay, so here's 2.5, now keep on doing what you're doing. We want the IDA to be part of where we as the county are going. Your responsibility, and one of your responsibilities in that is the management of the water system as a part of where we as Madison County.
That's right. Well, Frank and I attended the Board of Education meeting at Isla the other day. You know, one of their big needs, as Zach reported in the paper last week, you know, the growth that's coming to that area. At some point, they're gonna need a new school at Isla.
Right.
Again, it'd be great to have that redundant county water supply tied into whatever facility they add on to or develop in another area up there. So, again, trying to view everyone's goals and objectives, but, you know, we are the ones that are putting the pipe in the ground, so we're certainly a part of that puzzle.
All right, with that said, I think we got it. I'll ask for a motion to commit.
For the record, I'll make a motion to commit up to $2.5 million to the National Development Business Authority for a primary grant applicant for 25% matching funds for the state physical recovery for water and sewer infrastructure application.
Second motion.
I have a motion by Derek, second by Mr. Chandler. All in favor, Dennis?
Yes.
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 Motion carries. Now, quickly,
Thank you, by the way.
Thank
You
you.
got time to hang around?
I do appreciate it.
yeah, y'all gotta hurry. Y'all gotta hurry.
Hurry up.
It's only got about 3 days, no, I mean, y'all gotta hurry.
Oh, they got
Yeah,
her.
that was an easy one, believe it or not.
Yeah, that was the easy one. Just quickly, now I'm not in too much of a hurry, because Zach don't have anything else to do this evening. Discuss an agreement with Windstream for state physical fund grants. This is exactly what y'all done back on the 2nd, just agreeing to enter into that. It is not what they done was they submitted it to the NTIA, now they turn around and they're submitting it to this. Again, it's no skin off our back, it's just saying we're a partner on the grant. Motion to enter into the agreement, with Kinetic Windstream for the physical recovery grant application.
And we just want to note, I noticed that they did not use the same language there on that, on page 2, there's a 1-sentence second paragraph under B, which is different. I think that's the one that we changed before,
Okay,
so that'd be contingent on changing it to
Yeah,
match the
I get that.
NTIA.
Okay.
you know which one he's talking about? Or you just show it to me after?
Yeah, I can.
All right,
So the motion would be to accept this agreement
it is,
contingent upon correction as noted by
absolutely
Mike
perfect.
Pruitt. Is that safe to say?
That's safe.
That's
yeah.
safe to say.
That is safe.
I'll make a motion to accept this agreement.
Motion by Mr. Adams, second by Mr. Kirk, all in favor, Terry.
Rule question for,
Oh, discussion.
Discussion.
and just, again, for the record, under B, where it says applicant shall pay provider the agreed upon funding amounts, we are agreeing that the funding amounts is 0.
That's correct.
Yeah, and this
I
is
mean,
substituted language that I assume, this is what I asked for. Applicant may provide administrative support or in-kind services in connection with the projects, however, provider, which is Windstream, will at its sole expense provide any and all matching funds or other financial support required.
Very good.
I don't know how we missed that. We've been going back and forth on this same topic for a week. Before adjournment,
We
this is,
we finished with vote.
oh, I thought we did, I'm sorry.
No, that's.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
unanimous, sorry. So we've got a situation that's came up, and I'm asking y'all what this board would like to do. And I wrote it down. As of today, we have 4 employees of the Madison County government that has tested positive for COVID-19. One other employee, hasn't been tested yet, but is at home doing self-quarantine. I do not come to this decision lightly, for I am for individual rights right up until the point it has the potential to harm others. I'm asking this board to make a policy in place for entry into the government buildings. Let me back that up. I'm asking to put mask policy in place for the entry of the government buildings unless you can show proof of vaccination. I've also been in touch with Sheriff Moore, considering he's over the security for the building. He concurs with the effort to keep our staff safe. Upon entering the building, any office staff that has face-to-face contact with citizens needs to wear a mask during that encounter. If an employee has been vaccinated, no mask will be required. Employees should show a copy of their COVID-19 vaccination card to the department head in order to be mask-free during their daily duties with the public. We do have plexiglass installed throughout the building, and distancing is encouraged. All efforts will be exhausted to keep both staff and citizens safe, but the government must continue to run. And the reason I made that note is, without calling names, two of these are department heads
That have COVID.
that have COVID, tested positive since Saturday. 2 of them are in managerial roles that tested positive. Now, I did not ask Michael, the sheriff, how many cases he has, but what I'm asking for in general is to state that if the public comes into the government complex or any government building, to please put on a mask. What I'm asking of the employees, because I'm firmly against mandates, but I'm asking the employee, if you have to confront somebody from the public, to please place a mask on, do your business, take it back off, set it on your desk. You don't have to work in a mask all day long, but if somebody comes in to ask you a direct question face to face, please put your mask on. This is not a mandatory statement, except for the part of the public coming into the building. There's a lot more cases in the county. I was on a DPH meeting the other day, and it said there was 132 cases in 2 weeks.
So what are we doing in the departments where we have department heads that have tested positive? How are we maintaining services, I guess is what I'm asking.
According to our policy, we've followed it word for word so far.
So you have an interim head.
Yes. Most department heads has a manager in the office. For instance, if Cody was out, he would turn to Jill, or if David was out, he would turn to Pepper. David Pat, Judge Pat, and something like that. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep everybody safe. I went to every department head today, told them the situation of the numbers that we have, and asked their input about making the public require masks to come into our building, and they said it would be a great idea. They were all thankful for it. We do have employees that are vaccinated, we have employees that are not vaccinated. But at this point, everybody, now that the FDA has approved this, I think some people's feeling a little more comfortable about it. I'm not gonna get on that soapbox, but I do wanna protect our staff, and I feel like asking for masks before they enter the building is just, it's not over the top, it's disrespect.
One thing, Mr. Adams' question, I guess, is, when you have employees who are exposed, do they have to stay home and
They do.
run that department? Yeah, so the CDC guidelines actually don't require quarantine if you're vaccinated, but they do if you're not.
Correct.
Another place that can play in.
Correct. The districts is in place. The phone call I had right before the meeting started was one of the employees that feels great, and I informed him to go to the doctor, get me a negative COVID test, and come on back to work. But you have to produce that negative COVID test. Or you can wait out the time period, which is 14 days.
This isn't probably for any of us, probably particularly for me, and I'm sure we're all over tired of all
We
the
are.
letters behind it.
We are.
One disagreement I have with, I'm not interested in checking somebody's card. One thing we do know that even if you are vaccinated, you still can contract and carry the virus.
Yes,
So
sir.
to segregate the population based on carded or not
Okay,
is wasting time.
so you just require everybody that comes in the door to have a mask on?
Yeah.
And then when somebody is here doing business in contact with the public, then they should mask as well.
That, I'm 100% fine with that. I just did not want to get into an argument of somebody saying,
Now, your outside
Yeah.
employees, your deputies, road department folks, you're talking about in the building.
I'm talking about in the building.
In the middle.
Because we're in a confined space and most of them are not.
Yeah.
Rec department ball games, they're outside, outdoors. I'm not asking anybody to wear a mask there. I'm just saying when you come into a confined space like this building.
So, let me just ask you, what are you gonna do in a department? Everybody can take down their mask, some of them are vaccinated and some of them aren't. And if they're closer than 6 foot,
We shouldn't have anybody that's closer than 6 foot.
okay, so we're gonna sort of make sure that people
Everybody's just-
socialize. and
That's
just-
correct.
Okay, all right.
And the department heads has been in agreement with it, and most of the employees, I've asked them all to step in. When I
Yeah.
spoke to the department head, I said, hey, all y'all come, let's talk about this for a second.
And
They were in
my-
agreement.
Cause my issue is that some people could say, well, I'm uncomfortable because I'm having to sit beside somebody that's not. And so, if you got, a Caterpillar once said that when you're not vaccinated, if you were vaccinated, you didn't have to wear a mask in class. It's gone back now, everybody's gotta wear a mask. You gotta wear it all the time. And I'm not saying we need to do
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm not.
But I'm just saying, we just need to make sure that everybody's comfortable in the building employee-wise. I think it's good, to have the public coming in, because you have no idea about that. The folks that are vaccinated or whatever, or feel comfortable without the mask on, when they're not dealing with the public, it's fine. I just wanna make sure that we don't have any issues with our other employees who may not be comfortable, as long as we got that 6 foot.
I've made it clear that anybody that feels uncomfortable, please contact Tracy Dake at HR or myself. If you feel like you're being
Try to make some
picked on in
accommodations.
any way, we will take care of that. We'll handle that immediately, because that'll not be tolerated. We have not had that though, with that being said.
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging the shots, I'm not discouraging the shots. I just wanna make sure our employees are safe, and I wanna keep this courthouse open. We have to have our government running.
If I can,
Sure.
let's expand on this just a little bit, though. If we're gonna do that, we might as well address the Board of it needs to be
It's all government
all,
buildings.
well, okay, that clears it up. It's all government buildings that this group is responsible for.
Correct.
Okay,
Derek,
very good.
is that something?
Oh, I think it's reasonable. I mean, if you're at your work desk and you're working and you're kind of in your own little world, I've got no problem, because it would be aggravating all day, don't get me wrong. But if you're interacting, or if you're a public person coming in shortly for, short-term business, I don't have any problem. I think it's probably a suitable compromise, voting season's gonna be coming up soon. I mean, it's, and like a lot of people, there's a lot of data out there, and you can cherry pick what you want, but at the end of the day, we gotta keep people in the seat to do the job of the government, and we can't afford having people out for a long extended period of time.
Help the school board get those kids back in school too.
Yeah.
That's my biggest fear.
Now, if, as things mature, and I'll say this, I guess, I'll go ahead and say it this way. As things mature, and what I mean by that is, the situation changes, different things, more people become comfortable with whether they have the shot or not. I'm sure the insurance industry is gonna start dictating several things that will be, cost either prohibitive or not, whether you interact one way or the other. I just like for my company, my supervisor doesn't know whether I have or not, but I've been directed, I have to fill out a form and send it to HR, and if there's a question, they can't ask me, but all they can ask is like, is he a go, no go to go to clients? If we have a client that says, don't send anybody that's, not vaccinated, they have to call my supervisor has to call HR and just say, I I need to go, no-go, Derek can go to this client. And even if it's a no-go, it could be on religious, medical, I mean, there's
There could be
several
several
reasons
reasons.
why they could, it could be a no-go, but I just wanna be careful of that, and, just that way, maybe if it just tends a little bit of, people's privacy a little bit more than, I just think we just need to not mandate it today, but start thinking about it.
Okay. And Zach, and I know you'll do a good job with this. I don't think it's asking too much of somebody that's buying a car tag, to place that mask on for 10 to 12 minutes to get your tag, because we want to continue to have that service offered and that office not be empty because everybody's on quarantine. That, I promise you, I rewrote this several times just for the fact that it's been weighing on me for several weeks, and Christina knows it, of what to do, but inevitably it come down to, we just want to keep our employees safe. That's all.
Here's another, just a thought for everybody, I'm way tired of all this. And you argue about does the mask work, does it not work? One thing it does is it reminds us that there's a situation.
That's it.
It's like a foot bath going into a chicken house. You're not gonna kill everything on your feet, but it reminds you that you need to be aware of biosecurity issues. So
That's good.
It's a reminder that hey, this is going on, let's be careful.
That's a good
Just
analogy.
nobody can remember what the granny said, wash your hands, stay out of somebody else's face.
I thought that's when you didn't brush your
And I
teeth.
agree, I don't, to me, having a liver transplant, I've been instructed by my
You're very
doctor,
aware.
immunodepressed.
Right.
And that's my concern too, is for other people that may be immune depressed, some gonna know it, and some are not gonna know what they are. And so anytime we deal with the public, we need to make sure that we're projecting, even if that mask, which I've talked to doctors and there's a lot of controversy about how effective it is. But if we're keeping at least a good distance in that, this way, they're not sending out a lot of particles, so, and if, the other thing is make sure our employees here know, and in all the places, that if they're sick, they don't need to be here, and we need to, we gotta understand that, and if we have to do some things, I know what our policies say, but we just need to be, we're gonna have to be a little bit flexible and understand that if there's things that come forward, we need to make sure that we accommodate so that we can keep as many of them here as that, and not have all of a sudden mass outbreak in a department that just decimates the department, because we've had some in places at Caterpillar where everybody that assembled engines was, not be able to work.
So we,
We got a question.
oh, I'm sorry.
Does schools count as government? And I'm not talking about
No,
students,
sure.
I'm not getting into that, but
No,
what
ma'am.
about like Board of Education meetings would,
They make their own
That-
determination.
that's
and that's all they're
That's
separate,
another
okay,
entity, we can't
They make their own.
govern what they do.
Yeah.
gotcha.
We just collect the tax that they pull.
On their
That's serious.
We just collect it, give it to them, though. We just collect it, we don't
just
get to
collect
keep
it.
it.
They decide how much they need, and then we collect it. That's the only thing that this Board of Commissioners does,
Gotcha.
all right? And I like our Board of Education and our school system, but it just needs to be, more people need to understand that, that we just,
If the tax money goes there, we get the grief.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, because, they get about, what?
60%.
60% of it.
I know.
So, there we go.
Yeah, I think our last number was 54%.
Yeah.
So
Was it
do we
54?
just vote on this, or you just pursue?
We should, I could just pursue it through
That's
the,
right.
through
Yeah, I
the,
was thinking
through
that
the
was
security
Chair Collins. It's
officers.
really an operational issue, but it's clear with the board before,
Very good.
I just wanted y'all to know how I felt and what was going on, but know that every single department head was contacted personally. And I literally said this, if you don't feel good, please go home and stay there until you get a negative test.
There we go.
And they were all thankful that they knew that this board had their back. I'll be honest with you, they all said, thank you. Some of them had questions about the sick time and this and that and the other, and I said, it's already in black and white. Tracy has a copy of it, you're good. So, any other questions? Motion to adjourn.
Move.
Done deal.
Done. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for all your attention here today.
Thank you for getting off the farm.
Y'all are gonna get tired of seeing Monday.
No, we're not.
They sing worse.
Sorry you had to get a wrinkled up copy.
That's okay, that's probably what it'll end up looking like anyway.
And
Hey, Josh, how you
the rec board, 501c.
Get to work.
Well,
Get to work.
The reason is because I think one of the other boards is a 501c3, but the rec board is not.
let me ask you, what would be the purpose of it?
Well, I'll tell you, they can't,
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna charge you, thank you.
the reason is because we have a
Well,
potential donee that wants to donate money.
Well, they're not willing to donate to the county.
It has to go to a 501c3.
Well, I think it would be tax deductible.
Yes, I have
I don't
one.
think county is tax
I have,
deductible.
I do have it on the screen.
It's
I
five
will
on
take
one.
it.
Somebody do a job.
Yeah, that was on the weekend.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Chuck,
I do
just
have
show me
that.
a master
And
plan.
Mr. Curtis gave me
And what
this
I'd like to
too.
see,
I just need to know like your
it may not
second,
matter.
third
So,
choice.
I don't know, that's what,
There's
what they're going to
color
do.
lanyards
Some of
for,
it says,
you know, what kind of
this is our
color you
job.
want,
Separate.
and
Some,
you know,
hotel
this
preference,
is
that
not-
kind of
this is
stuff.
our
Just to make
job.
sure that,
So,
because as I'm a phone number, I can set down my cells again, and if I can't get your first pick, I don't wanna choose your second pick.
Water and sewer had all those
So-
municipalities.
Well, we don't know.
I hadn't seen that.
I got one of my real colors.
Yeah, what you got, you don't have to give this to me until the next meeting at midnight. So that'll be.
His CPA
days
tells
before I
him
have
to
to
do
rec
that
501c3.
You thought we
We have an
was
option.
You know, that should be.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure he's-
Last time you could be at the holiday,
It may, it all be
You know,
wrong.
when he's paid for a service.
I like the holidays, but I mean, they're both right there together.
Should one does. They're not a copyrighted item.
Especially
You know,
if
they
she's
senior
on
center
the
is a
I think she
copy.
was.
Yeah.
You can donate the same.
She'll be easier to get in and out of the hotel.
They're not
That's right, that boat.
friends with us or not.
Okay.
They can't get
The
them.
one that's right next to the conference center, I watched that.
Their board.
Yeah.
They talk about the one
Good,
that's
good.
right there.
That's the conversation.
Very simple.
That's the conversation. Y'all gotta.
I didn't come out and say it, but okay.
So which
it's
center,
still
where is it at this time?
Yes,
Is it the same
because
place?
that way they're eligible, they got like 7 different grants, but they can't do it in the county.
Is
that the Marriott?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I could go outside.
No, they're saying that one.
Okay, I still think we need to
do
set
this
it up
year,
as
so
like
they
a
were
separate
almost.
booster club, so it's not.
That and it's like a parking lot.
Ready to park
Very-
lot,
I'll have, I'll have Shelley contact you so she can let you know what they're trying to do,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
I got the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
No, that's fine.
You have a lot.
Yeah.
That was,
And so,
that's a well.
we'll be.
Because it's on that main, it's not on the water, but it's on that main drag, so I figured it's run on the water around.
Yeah, well, that's what I was telling him, I wasn't sure about the boat ferry, and I was like, I've got to ask, I don't know who.
But, so I
If
got
I know you
away.
don't want to.
Yeah, last time we rode the boat.
Yeah, it ain't bad.
Elizabeth Allen from Department of Health.
I didn't know if you had like a water ferry.
No, it is not that bad. And I mean, the only reason, I think the only reason they don't run is like you.
She bought the
Yeah, you
train
can
set.
see or something.
I'm proud, I mean,
Change that.
And I think they had extra boats.
Several years.
Yeah.
They'll do shuttle buses, they said, the boats, for some reason, they bring over shuttle buses.
Several
Just-
more things. Several radar.
And they went to,
Resignation.
aggressive.
And Mark didn't know that.
Lakeside.
Filling up the chair.
Well, all right.
This too shall
I've
pass.
had it both.
Did you
I've
need
had
this?
salmon.
I will take your copy.
Okay.
I definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Too much or?
Yes, sir.
We really